Welcome to the Probe Podumentary. Our Podumentary is a series of audio documentaries on topics and stories that matter to people and are part of a public interest journalism in India. You're listening to me, Prema Sridevi. Here is a new episode of our Podumentary titled Electoral Bonds, the Curse of Indian Democracy. When the government of India introduced the electoral bonds, it claimed they would bring transparency to political party funding. But the bonds have just done the opposite. It compromised electoral transparency and has made political party funding murky in the world's largest democracy. Former Chief Election Commissioner of India, S.Y. Qureshi, says it's unfortunate that the bonds continue to damage India's democracy even after it was red flagged by the Election Commission of India.
This was introduced through the budget, Union Budget of 2017. When the finance minister started talking about it, it sounded like music to our ears. His first sentence was that without the transparency of political funding, free and fair elections are not possible. That is something what we have been saying, so we were very delighted when he said that. His second sentence, that in the last 70 years we have failed to achieve transparency. This was a statement of fact, and this also gladdened our hearts. The third sentence demolished all that, and when he said that we are going to introduce electoral bonds, and what are those bonds, that these will kill whatever transparency we had so far. What was the transparency then? Any donation of over 20,000 rupees was reported to the Election Commission. And now even 20,000 crores or whatever crores, the donation will not be known to anybody. So whatever transparency existed was killed in one stroke. So why was he talking of transparency? And is this transparency? The Election Commission itself raised a red flag about it in very strong terms. And it went up to the Supreme Court, and it's a pity. It's extremely sorry thing that Supreme Court did not find it an important enough issue of national concern to take it up for 5 years. It's a good thing that at least now a constitution bench has been formed, but this should have been done 5 years ago. Supreme Court has held in many of its judgments that free and fair elections are the fundamental principle of democracy. They are the core of the constitution, and therefore something which was required and which was attacking the transparency, it should have taken cognizance of immediately. So it's sad that it did not.
The electoral bond scheme allows individuals and corporations to purchase electoral bonds from the State Bank of India, which can then be provided to political parties. The bonds are a bearer instrument, and the political parties must deposit them in the SBI to redeem them. The bond is valid for a period of 15 days from the day of its purchase. However, the names of the donors will remain anonymous. Ullek NP, executive editor of Open Magazine, says that the electoral bonds give an unfair advantage to the party in power.
Usually, it's a party that's in power that always got more funds. In the olden days, it was the Congress that got a majority of the funds, and the High Command, which comprises mainly the Nehru-Gandhi family, became extremely powerful because of their access to these funds, especially from corporations. And then we hope that that era of very opaque funding to political parties was over with the introduction of electoral bonds. But then what happened was there is no, what we envisaged was not what happened, which is why it is boomeranged big time. The expectations were that whoever buys these electoral bonds, their names would be made public. And whichever political party gets funding from a particular person, that also becomes public. But that did not happen. So, through the introduction of electoral bonds, what we had wanted to happen did not happen. We ended up reinforcing the mafia. Whoever buys electoral bonds enjoys, tax break, in the sense you don't have to pay tax for that amount. And this is an incentive for anyone who makes a political contribution, political fund, who buys electoral bonds to contribute to a political party. We understand that, but the problem is that the public doesn't come to know who funded whom. So we don't get to know whose interests are being protected by who.
According to the State Bank of India data, donations to political parties through electoral bonds have already crossed the rupees 10,000 crore mark in the 21st sale of electoral bonds conducted between July 1st and 10th. Electoral bonds distort democracy and affect free and fair elections, says Jagdeep S. Chokar, founder and trustee of the Association for Democratic Reforms.
Even today, the figure is around 70% of the bonds that are donated go to the party in power at the center. So electoral bonds, by virtue of this fact that the government or the party in power has access to the information of who has bought the bonds, is able to stop or significantly or very significantly reduce the funding to opposition parties, thereby making it a completely not a level playing field, making it a highly distorted playing field. Because one party which is in power has all the information, it has every possible means of influencing the possible donors, and therefore other parties don't stand a chance. So this itself is a gross distortion of democracy.
Several organizations, including the Association for Democratic Reforms, have been advocating for the disclosure of the details of the bond donors. RTI activist and retired Commodore Lokesh Batra has been tracking the sale of electoral bonds since its introduction. The replies received through his RTI petitions have thrown more light on the extent of funding received by political parties in the country through the EB scheme.
Before me also there were certain activists who had filed RTI to know the details of electoral bond, one application or two in the beginning itself. But I had filed RTI starting from the Election Commission to the Law Ministry, to the Ministry of Finance, different departments, to see how it progressed and what actions have been taken. Initially, Law Ministry in their letter of 26 May 2017 clearly mentioned it's a retrograde step. It will create a shell company and add to the corruption. They are written to Law Ministry, who was sitting on this letter when I came to know after filing my RTI. So the Ministry of Finance. Nothing much had come up. Secondly, even the day before announcement in Parliament, the finance bill by the then Finance Minister, late Arun Jaitley, just a day or 2 days before, they decided that they should be asking RBI views also, because in the process of bringing electoral bond, in fact, every law which was meant to be by the Election Commission for conducting election was changed, including the RBI Act was diluted. So before that, they asked over a weekend to RBI, and they worked hard and replied it, saying that this is not a correct way of doing it. The Election Commission was saying it will bring in corruption. That was their first reaction. However, it was stated on the file that since the speech is already finalized, let's go ahead with the announcement. On the other hand, if I look at it, not only RBI, Election Commission, there when you go through the files, you will note that even Law Ministry was against issuing the promissory note, because that was initially the power of the RBI, any kind of that thing. But they have gone ahead and pushed through their scheme in spite of a lot of protests from the own government agencies like Election Commission of India, Ministry of Law, Ministry of Finance, Department of Economic Affairs. So that is how it happened. In fact, when they issued a notification dated 2nd January 2018, Before that, a draft was circulated to State Bank of India, who has been made in charge in one particular branch. So they also had question on this issue of draft, that it should not be a promissory note. Accounting will be little difficult. Something like this they had put in place. Anyway, government went and pushed through the whole process, and there we got his first sale was on 1st March 2008.
The Election Commission of India recently wrote to the government seeking restrictions on cash donations to political parties. According to Batra, the government has been making exceptions to its own rules on electoral bonds and making the process even more opaque.
Eligible period is 15 days from calendar days from the date you purchase the electoral bond, you can redeem. And it has to be issued for only 10 days. Sale period is 10 days. That means if you buy on 10th of the month, you can encash it till 24th of that month, the whole process. But it happened if we came across in a file that in once 10 crores worth electoral bonds were not encashed in time. So promptly, State Bank of India wrote to the Ministry of Finance, Department of Economic Affairs, that the electoral bond holders of worth 10 crores plus 10 crores have approached Delhi branch to encash them. But the period is over. So they requested government to tell us the truth. So government said, okay, this is an exception. You use it 15, not the calendar days, 15 days, excluding Saturday, Sunday, holiday. Only for one-time exception. So things have gone to that extent. So, why would the government give concession for a 10 crore, even which is against notification?
Poonam Agarwal, freelance development researcher with the BBC and editor investigations with the Quint, says that electoral bonds can be used to funnel black money into political parties by corporate houses that want to curry favors from the government. The EB scheme is nothing but the institutionalization and legalization of political corruption.
The electoral bonds were introduced for the purpose of bringing in transparency, in the sense that the government claimed that the purchaser or the donor, whoever will purchase the electoral bond, his identity will not be revealed. It will be anonymous, because the point that the government claimed that all these donors, some of them, they are scared of revealing their identity. One. Secondly, government claimed that all the donation will go through banking channel, that is white money, because you need to purchase an electoral bond from the bank and then hand it over to the political party. So these were the two major claims which were made by the government. There were multiple communications which were made by different departments like Election Commission, the Finance Ministry, as well as concerns were raised by the SBI as well, because a corporate company can very well set up a shell company just to route their black money and make donations to the political parties. So the first claim that the black money will not come in the political party does not stand.
According to S.Y. Qureshi, the solution is very simple. While the donors want secrecy, the people of the country want transparency. In a democracy, the will of the people is supreme. In the spirit of democracy and free and fair elections, it is high time the donors' details are made public.
The solution is very easy. The reason given by the finance minister was that the donors want secrecy. Well, donors want secrecy, but people want transparency. Whose will is the supreme? And the same donors had been donating for 70 years in the past without protesting. They were giving to all political parties, and same donor was giving to rival parties, so that whosoever comes to power, it doesn't affect the health of that company. So that was something which was going on smoothly for the last 70 years. So now killing this transparency in the name of the donor wanting secrecy is totally against the spirit of democracy and against the spirit of free and fair election. Now, what can be done? Very simple. Okay, it said that the purpose was to take away the cash transaction and go into digital transaction. Fair enough, fair enough. But make the donation public. Why should it be secret? Because people want to know which company has donated how much amount to the government, and so that they know in return thereof what quid pro quo happens, what loans, contracts, licenses are given to that company in lieu of the donations received.
It's been more than 5 years since electoral bonds were introduced in India. Since then, some of the most important institutions of the country, like the Election Commission of India, the Reserve Bank of India, and the State Bank of India, amongst others, have raised questions about the opacity of the scheme. Ullekh notes that it is time the people of the country are told who is funding the political parties in the world's largest democracy.
Current opaque nature of electoral bonds adds to a certain endurance of all odds of the past, all ills of the past, and it's comfortable for all parties concerned, especially the ruling party. So we must ensure, of course, one should always have faith in judiciary to act. And so I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and we hope there is greater level of transparency in electoral bonds. It's just as simple as disclosing how much money has been spent on buying electoral bonds by a particular corporate entity, and who has this corporate entity donated more. A huge sum of money goes to the ruling party, but we don't know anything more than that. But we need to know, and then things will be better.